So I've got a bunch of stuff, bunch of songs that originate in Maine or the Canadian Maritimes or the Northeast of the United States. And what I decided to do when I had to fill out a whole 50 minutes instead of just 25, I'm going to tell some stories. These will be, some of them are recitations, so songs without music. Others are just true tales about the Mainers from the past. And so a little bit different. Some good songs and some good stories. And I hope you enjoy yourselves along the way. But I'll start out with a genuine Maine folk song. It was written by, I think his name was Amos Harding. He was from just outside of Bangor. And I think he wrote this in the late 1800s. And it describes, he titles the song, A Trip to the Grand Banks. And the Grand Banks were the primary fishing ground of the North Atlantic, or one of the primary ones, at least for North America. And this will give you an idea what it was like to be a dory fisherman off a Grand Banks fishing schooner 120 years ago. So here's Amos's song called A Trip to the Grand Banks. Oh, early in the spring when the snow is all gone, the Penobscot boys are anxious their money for to earn. So they fed out a fisherman 100 tons a night for the Grand Banks of Newfoundland, their luck for to try. Sailing down the river, the weather being fine, our homes and our friends we are leaving behind. We pass by Sable Island as we've often done before, where the waves dash tremendous on that storm-beaten shore. Oh, the vessel is our quarters and the ocean is our home, and islands, capes and headlands we're leaving far astern. We sail to the eastward for 3 days or 4, then we round to and sound so many miles from the shore. And then we run for the shoals and we run for the rocks, where the hagdolls and carries surround us in their flocks. We let go our best anchor where the seas run so high, on the Grand Banks of Newfoundland the snap eyes for to try. Oh, early in the morn at the dawn of the day, we jump into our dory and we saw away. The snap eyes steal our bait, we rip and we rave, and if ever we get home again we'll give up the trade. In this way the summer passes through dread and through fear, with fog, moles and gales of wind and big ships passing near. They sometimes run the schooners down and sink them in the deep. Oh, the thought of such scenery is horrid to repeat. Well, now our salt is all wet but 1/2 a pen. The colors we will show and the mainsail will bend. We'll wash her down and scrub the decks, the dories we will stow. Then it's heave up the anchor to the westward we'll go. Yes, it's heave up the anchor to the westward we'll go. That's how they did it. And there's a good chance that those Penobscot boys that were mentioned, they had spent the winter in the lumber woods of Maine, chopping down pine trees and other things. So it was very much seasonal work for some folks. But not easy work, even though that song is a bit kind of jovial. You get a sense from the different verses. It wasn't very easy. Oh, just a little help with glossary. Snap eyes. They were small codfish that were not really worth catching because they weren't very big, but they would steal the bait on the trawl lines. So the sailors, the fishermen didn't really like them very much, as you could tell. And the reference in the final verse to now our salt is all wet, but 1/2 a pen. back in the days before refrigeration, the way you preserved fish was by salting it down. And so that was the measure of a successful trip, was you got all your salt wet. All right. Now, that does mention the Penobscot River, which is also the name of the bay that the Penobscot empties into, Penobscot Bay. A well-known and scenic bay, mid-state Maine. And there's a bunch of stories that come out of that area. And there's one about this sea captain. So to understand this story, you gotta know that the little town of Searsport, Maine, which is right at the head of Penobscot Bay, in the 1800s, the mid 1800s, this little town, which is probably not more than 1,000 souls, produced 10% of the sea captains in the American Merchant Marine. So almost any boy who grew up in Searsport ended up on a sailing ship going around the world, and as a good chance could have been a captain too. And so this story is about one of them guys. His name was Josiah Hackett, and he was a captain. He started out as a young man, went to sea as a boy on square riggers, worked his way up the ranks through the mates, and then became master of different vessels. He sailed across the Pacific to China. He was involved in the lumber trade across the Atlantic. He went everywhere. But in his later years, he got a little tired of them long absences. Several months of a journey, sometimes years, and so he decided he'd keep his foot in the business, but relax a little bit, and he became the captain of a coasting schooner. And these little coasting schooners were the semi-tractor trailers of the day. They moved a lot of bulk cargoes up and down the coast of New England and down around even as far as the Gulf of Mexico. And so Captain Hackett, he had a little schooner, and there's this story about one time where the schooner was coming back from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. They had run down with some cargo of timber, and they were heading back. And Captain Hackett was kind of famous among the sailors of that era because he was so good at his job. He could tell where the ship was by the taste of the ocean bottom. Now you may wonder, how could the captain taste the ocean bottom? Well, it's because of the device they used to measure the depth of the water called the lead line. And the lead line was a rope attached to a big piece of iron, like just a chunk of wrought iron, and it had a little dimple in the bottom where the sailors would stuff some beef tallow, and that was sticky. So when the lead went down and hit the bottom, whatever the bottom was would stick to the tallow. They'd bring it up. And the skipper, Captain Hackett, he would take a taste of it. And he had been sailing his whole life, and he knew by the mere taste of that ocean bottom where they were at the time. And so this particular trip, this came in real handy. His sailors were kind of, He was a hard man to shave, as they say. So he was certainly a fair captain, but he wasn't gentle. And so not everybody on the ship was a big fan of his. But this particular voyage, they reached the mouth of Penobscot Bay, and they're heading in, and they run into a big fog bank. And so they doused most of the sails. They were creeping along just under staysail, and the captain had the lead going in the bow. He had a sailor up there throwing the lead every 10 minutes to see, okay, how deep is it? What do we got down there? And at one point, he'd taste the lead, and he'd say, oh, yeah, we're right where we want to be. We're off the southeast of Vinyl Haven Island. And then an hour later, it's like, man, taste that again. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's Eggemoggin Reach is off to the west there, so we're doing fine. But they're now getting close to home. And one of the sailors, he was a bit of a prankster. And one of the nice things about being in the coastal trade was that Captain Hackett's wife, Mrs. Hackett, he wasn't gone that long. And so she was able to give him some of the comforts of home. And so what she had done is installed a window box, a flower box on the taffrail of the schooner with some beautiful flowers, just to remind her husband about the pleasures of home, and so he wouldn't get tempted to go sailing far away again. And so on this particular voyage, this one sailor pranks her. He says, we're going to give the old man a little bit of a trick here. And so he runs back without being seen, and he grabs a handful of dirt out of that window box and sticks it in his pocket. And so the next time the captain says, bring that lead back here, the sailor takes some of that dirt out and he stuffs it in the bottom of the lead, and he brings it back, and the captain goes, he pauses a minute, he takes another taste, and then he starts yelling, hard to starboard, let fly the sheets, all hands to tack ship, we're right over Mrs. Hackett's garden. We don't know if that's true or not, but I'm going to believe it.
I believe you. I believe you.
Thank you. So, as the song about the Grand Banks fishing indicated, there were lots of dangers of being a Grand Bank fisherman. One of the greatest of is that ships in the fog, which was very common, could run down other smaller vessels. And out of that actuality came this next song, which is called The Ghostly Crew. Now we're only a month away from Halloween, so it seems like it'd be kind of appropriate to share this song. And if you want real atmosphere, turn your lights down. You can smile if you've a mind to, but perhaps you'll lend an ear. As man and boy together for nigh on 40 years, I've sailed about this ocean through summer's pleasant days, and through the gales of winter when the howling winds do rage. I've been tossed about on George's shoals, been anchored in the bay, down south in early season, most anywhere 'twould pay. I fished in different vessels on the western banks and Grand, and I've shipped in herring vessels that sailed from Newfoundland. Well, I saw some times, I'll tell you boys, when things looked rather blue, but somehow I was always quite lucky and pulled through. I will not brag, however, and I won't say much, but then I'm not more easily frightened than most of other men. Well, last trip as we were sailing home, we were offshore a ways. I never will forget it in all my mortal days. 'Twas in the dark mid-watches that I felt a chilling dread come over me, as if I heard one calling from the dead. Then right over the rail there clambered, all silent, one by one, a dozen dripping sailors. Just wait till I am done. Their faces pale and sea-wan shone in that ghostly night, and each one took a station just as if he had a right. Well, they moved about before us until land was most in sight, or rather I should say until the lighthouse shone its light. And then those ghostly sailors, they moved to the rail again, and they vanished in an instant from before the sight of men. Well, we sailed right into harbor, and now every mother's son will tell you the same story, just the same as I have done. The trip just before that one, well, we'd fished on George's then, and we'd run down another vessel and sank her with all the men. Well, these were those same poor fellas, and I hope God rests their souls, that our old ship ran over and sank on George's shoals. Well, now you've heard my story, and it's true what I do say, and I do believe in spirits ever since that day. Little creepy. Little creepy. It's better around a campfire, actually. Well, since we brought up creepiness and ghosts and things like that, I thought this next poem would be appropriate. This was a poem by John Masefield, who was the one-time poet laureate of Great Britain, and he calls it Mother Carey. Mother Carey was a legendary figure in sailor lore, and so you're about to learn all about it here. Masefield subtitles this poem, Mother Carey as told to me by the bosun. Mother Carey? Oh, she's the mother of the witches and all them sorts of rips. She's a fine gal to look at, but the hitch is she's a sight too fond of ships. She lives on an iceberg to the nor'ard, and her man, he's Davy Jones. She combs the weeds upon her forehead with poor drowned sailors' bones. She's the mother of the winds, and the mother of all. She's the mother of the wrecks, and the mother of all big winds as blows. She's up to some deviltry or other when it storms or sleets or snows. The sound of the wind's her screaming, I'm after some plump, young, fine, brass-buttoned, beefy, rib young seaman, so as me and me mate can dine. She's a hungry old rip and a cruel to sailormen like we. And she's given many mariners the gruel in a long sleep under the sea. She's the blood of many a crew upon her, and the bones of many a wreck. And there's barnacles growing on her, and shark's teeth round her neck. I ain't never had no schooling, nor read no books like you, but I know 'tain't healthy to be foolin' with that there grizzly too. You're young, you thinks, and you're leery, but if you're to make old bones, steer clear, I says, of Mother Carey and that there Davy Jones. Good advice. And there's a common seabird that you see out in blue water called I think it's the sailors call them Mother Carey's chickens, but they're, what are they called, Jamie? I think they're not shearwaters. They might be shearwaters. I should know this.
Albatross terns.
No, they're little ones. They're very small and they're dark colored. Oh well.
Oh well.
That fact is out there for all to discover at will. Well, so let's get away from the really dark and scary stuff. And one of the other dangers that old-time sailors faced is highlighted in this next song. This is from Newfoundland, and it you'll learn how some sailors who weren't careful could end up in trouble. It's about a little port called Harbor Lacou. Oh, as I rowed ashore from my schooner close by, a girl on the beach I did chance to espy. Her hair it was red, and her bonnet was blue, and her place of abode was in Harbor Lacou. Now boldly I asked her to walk on the sand. She smiled at me gaily and held out her hand. So I buttons me Guernsey and hove way my chew into the dark rolling waters of Harbor Lacou. And as we strolled along at the end of the day, I thought of my wife who was back in Torbay, and I thought how she'd kill me if she only knew I was courting a maiden in Harbor Lacou. as we passed an old lighthouse at the head of the shore. I met an old comrade I'd sailed with before. He greeted me kindly, says, Bill, how are you? It is seldom we see ya in harbor. Look good. And as I was aparting this maiden in tow, he broke up my party with one single blow. Say hello to your missus and your wee kiddies too. I remember her well, she's from Harbor. Well, I looked at this maiden a-standing alongside. Her jaw did drop and her mouth opened wide. And then like a she-cat upon me she flew, and I fled from the furies of Harbor. So come all you young sailors that walk on the shore, beware of old comrades you sailed with before. Beware of that maiden with the bonnet of blue, and the pretty young damsels of Harbor. Look who. So good advice there on many different levels. Oh man. Now, the song mentions your wee kiddies 3. No, wee kiddies 2. Okay, so that doesn't relate. But it gets me thinking about children and sailors and things like that. But there's a story. This is about a little fishing village. Happened in a little fishing village near where I grew up on the coast of Maine. The village is called Cundy's Harbour, and this concerns a young fella, Richard Coffin was his name. A lot of coffins down Cundy's Harbour, He was not the sharpest tack in the box, as they used to say. But he was a good man. He was a hard worker. And this was a long time ago. He barely made it through school, but he had a little bit of misfortune because he got Becky Thatcher in a family way right before he graduated from high school. And he was an honorable fella, so he did the right thing and he married her, even though he didn't have much of a way to support her. And the only place they could afford to live was an old renovated fishing shack down on the point. And so he fixed it up, kept the rain out, and he found work around the docks and did his best to support her as her belly got bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, one night, it was November, and Becky commenced to groaning, and things were starting to move along. And so Dickie, as he was known, he realized he better go get the doctor. So he ran all the way up into the center of town and found Doc Johnson. He said, Doc, it's Becky's time, I think. Can you come down right away? Doc said, let me pack my bag, Dickie, and we'll head down together. So they get back to the shack. It's dark as can be. And the doc says, all right, Dickie, I'll take care of Becky. You light a lantern or two and go and fire up the stove and boil me some water. All right, I'll do that, Doc. I'll do that right away. And a couple hours go by, and the sounds are increasing from the bedroom, and Dickie's getting really nervous. And finally, Doc Johnson says, Dickie, come in here and bring a lantern. So Dickie goes into the bedroom, and there's Becky on the bed, and the doctor says, all right, you hold that lantern right over here so I can see what I'm doing. The doctor bends down and hunches over, and in a minute or two, he sits back, and he holds up a little baby. He says, well, Dickie, I'm so glad to congratulate you on being the father of a fine, strapping baby boy. Oh, wait a minute, Dickie, hold that light up again. Doc goes back down, and in another couple minutes, he sits up again. He says, well, Dickie, this is a rare pleasure for me. I get to congratulate you on being the father of twin boys. Oh, Dickie, hold that lantern up again and put it nice and close. Doc bends over once more. And after a couple of minutes, he sits back in his chair and he says, well, I've been doctoring here in Cundy's Harbor for 40 some odd years, but Dickie, this is the first time I've had the chance to congratulate a man on being the father of triplets. Dickie's standing there with the lantern. He says, Doc, do you think it's the light that's drawing them? He skipped biology class, I guess.
Oh, goodness. Jerry, it's so good to hear you tell some tales. Thank you.
Oh, well. How am I doing on time? I got about 20 minutes, I think.
Yes, you do.
Okay. Well, let's... this is a favorite song of mine because it's about what it took to put ships together. So we love shanties, we love sailor songs, but there's a whole range of industry and crafts that were required to actually build a ship, build a boat that sailors could go out on the water. And so this song, it's a traditional song concerning a forgotten activity of New England shipbuilders. One of the best woods for building ships that would last and that were sturdy was to go find the right kind of wood or timber. And live oak, which grows down south, was considered one of the top woods. It was very dense, very hard, very tough, and resisted rot very effectively. So many New England shipbuilders would send crews down to the coast of the Carolinas and Georgia and Florida, and they'd harvest live oak. This started in the mid to late 1700s, actually. But it was wicked hard work. And this song, whoever the fellow was that composed this song, had firsthand experience about what it was like. So this is the song called Maulin' Live Oak. One day I was traveling and I happened to think my pockets is empty, I can't buy a drink. I am an old bummer, completely dead broke, and there's nothing to do but go maulin' live oak. Derry down, 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 derry down. So I went right away for to see Captain Swift, to see and find out could he give me a lift. He looks me all over from top on to toe. Says he, you're the boy who live oaken must go. Derry down, 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 derry down. So we took out the contract which both of us signed, to keep and secure if we both were inclined. But the very best wages that he could afford, it was only $5 a month, and my board. Derry down, 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 derry down. Well, I had to get ready without much delay, for the schooner was sailing the very next day, with 2 pints of whiskey, a pipe and a spoon. Away we set sail for Mosquito Lagoon. Derry down, 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 derry down. Well, now bluff was the game that we played every night, and in it Charles Douglas, he took great delight. He won my tobacco while others cracked jokes. Says he, you'll get more when you're maulin' live oak. Derry down, 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 derry down. Now maulin' this live oak, they say, is great fun, especially the dry ones that make the sweat run. It'll make your axe handles to glimmer and smoke. Oh, you need iron handles for maulin' live oak. Derry down, 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 derry down. It's mosquitoes by day and it's midges by night, and the sand fleas and bed bugs, they bother me quite. And if ever back home my head I do poke, it's to hell I'll kick Swift and his goddamn live oak dairy down, 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 dairy, down, dairy, down, 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 dairy, down. Boy, our ancestors were hard-working people, I tell you. There's deep-sea fishermen. There's Grand Banks fishermen. And then there were shore fishermen. And shore fishing was something that the settlers, the early European settlers, learned from the Native Americans. Native Americans had figured this out for thousands of years. And so the English and the Irish and the Basques and all those folks who came over here originally adopted their practices. And it's called weir fishing. A weir is a structure in a cove, set in a cove, of lots of little sticks of wood, very tall, set close together with a funnel that when the tide is coming in, the fish will go into the tunnel, and they end up inside this big area that's enclosed by the poles of the weir. And when the tide goes out, the weir is constructed that the fish are trapped. So men who did weir fishing had to go out and empty the weir, get their fish out before the tide got high again. I'm going to share a poem with you about this activity. It's called Charlie Tends Weir. It was written by Ruth Moore. Ruth Moore is a Maine poet who's got a bunch of wonderful poems that will put you in touch with what life was like on the coast of Maine in bygone days. But this one is about Charlie tending weir. Well, Charlie had a heron weir down to Bailey's Bight. He got up to tend it in the middle of the night, late October, midnight, black as tar. Nothing out the window but a big cold star. House like a cemetery, kitchen fire dead. I've a damn good mind, says Charlie, to go on back to bed. Man who runs a heron weir, even on the side, is nothing but a slave to the goddamn tide. Well, a man feels meager, and a man feels old in the pitch-black midnight, lonesome and cold. Chills in his stomach like 40,000 mice, and the very buttons of his pants little lumps of ice. Times he gets to thinking that it's no damned use. So Charlie had a pitcherful in his orange juice. Oh, well, then he felt better than he had before, so he had another pitcherful to last him to the shore. Well, down by the beach rocks, underneath a tree, Charlie saw something that he never thought he'd see. Sparkling in the lantern light as he went to pass were 3 big diamonds in the frosty grass. Oh, says Charlie, diamonds? Where'd they come from? I'll pick 'em up later, I've always wanted some. And then he hove in his dory. She felt light as air, and in the dark midnight he rode out to tend the weir. Now, out by the weir gate, Charlie found an old sea serpent swimming round. Head like a washtub, whiskers like thatch, and breath like the flame on a Portland star match. Black in the lantern light up he rose, a great big barnacle on the end of his nose, and he looks Charlie over surly and cross and says, "Them fish you got shut up in there belong to my boss." "Fish," says Charlie. "Fish in there? Why, I ain't caught a fish since I built the damn weir." Well, the sea serpent twizzled and said, didn't say that. He said, "Well," says sea serpent, "nevertheless, there's 10,000 bushel at a rough guess." Well, Charlie moved the lantern and he gave the oars a pull, and he saw that the weir was brimble full, fish rising out the water 1,000,000,000,000 at a time, and the side of each and every one was like a silver dime. "Well," says sea serpent, "what you gonna do? They're uncomfortable and they don't belong to you, so open this contraption up and let 'em go. Come on, get the lead out. The boss says so." "Does," says Charlie. Well, who the hell's he thinks he can set back and send word to me? The sea serpent twizzled and made a water spout. You just keep on, brother, and you'll find out. Oh, says Charlie, you're nothing but a lie so old you hurry, so get your dirty whiskers off the gunnel of my dory. Well, the sea serpent rumbled and heaved underneath, and he scun back a set of sharp-yellow teeth, and he came at Charlie with a gurgly roar. Charlie let him have it with the port side oar right on the noggin. Hell of a knock. And that old sea serpent sank like a rock. You go on back, says Charlie. Tell the old jerk not to send a boy to do a man's work. Then out of the darkness, right by the weir, a tinkly little voice said, Yoo-hoo, Charlie dear. Now what, says Charlie, this ain't funny. And the same sweet voice said, Yoo-hoo, Charlie honey. And there on the seine pole, right in the weir, was a little green mermaid combing out her hair. All right, says Charlie, I see you, and I know where you come from, so you get too. And he let fly his bailing scoop. It landed with a clunk, and when the water had settled the mermaid, she had sunk. Then the water moved behind him with a heave and a hiss, and a thundery, rumbly voice said, I'm goddamn sick of this. And up come an old man, white from top to toe, whiter than a daisy field, whiter than the snow, carrying a pitchfork with 3 tines on it, muttering in his whiskers and madder than a hornet. My sea serpent's so lame that he can hardly stir. And my best mermaid, you raised a lump on her, and you've been mighty sassy calling me a jerk. So now the old man's come to do a man's work. Look, says Charlie, you may be the hoary old man of the sea, but I gotta run a fish here shut up inside, and if you keep on friggin' around, you'll make me lose the time. Next thing Charlie knew, he was lying on the sand. The painter of his dory was right beside his hand. He could see clear across the bay, calm and still and wide. It was broad daylight, and it was high tide. Oh, says Charlie, what am I about? The oars weren't wet, so he hadn't been out. Oh, he says, diamonds underneath that tree. Seems to me I found some, I better go see. But he didn't find any. Not one gem, just 3 little owl dungs with the frost on them. Charlie Tends Weir by Ruth Moore.
Oh, that was fun.
Oh, well told.
Great.
Well done.
Well, thank you.
We have about 10 more minutes.
10 minutes. All right. I know just what to do. So it's sort of lunchtime, depending on the time zone you're in. Here in the Eastern time zone, it's definitely lunchtime. So I'm feeling a bit peckish. So I'll sing a song called The Sailor's Grace. Now this was originally a poem, a satirical poem that sailors would say when they were served their salt beef, also known as corned beef. I don't think it was quite as tasty as our corned beef today, but it's the same process of preserving it. But sailors were convinced that skinflint captains would save money by not buying salt beef, but instead buying horse meat. Salted horse meat, which of course no sailor wanted to eat horse meat. They wanted their good salt beef or salt pork. And so this Sailor's Grace, which obviously originated with a Maine sailor, because the two locations mentioned in the song, Portland is a big city in Maine, and Sackarap is right up the Fore River from Portland, and it's now called Westbrook, Maine. So pretty certain this is a Mainer's song, or Maynard's poem at least, and someone set it to music, and it might give you an appetite, who knows. Old horse, I'd have you know that to the galley you must go, where the cook without a sign of grief will boil you down and call you beef. Old horse, what brought you here from Sackarap to Portland Pier? All worn out with sore abuse, they salt you down for the sailors' use. Old horse, both near and far, your food for every hard work tar. In strongest brine you have been sunk until you're hard and coarse as junk. Old horse, what brought you here from Sackarap to Portland Pier? All worn out with sore abuse, they salt you down for the sailors' use. They do you despise, they pick you up and damn your eyes. They eat your flesh and gnaw your bones, and they throw the rest to Davy Jones. Old horse, what brought you here from Sackarap to Portland Pier? All worn out with sore abuse, they salt you down for the sailors' use. Sackarap to Portland Pier, you carted stone for many a year. Oh, you labored long and well, alack, till you fell down and you broke your back. Old horse, what brought you here from Sackarap to Portland Pier? All worn out with sore abuse, they salt you down for the sailors' use. Old horse, what brought you here from Sackarap to Portland Pier? All worn out with sore abuse, they salt you down for the sailors' use. Yum, yum, yum.
Oh, thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome. And that meant 5, right, Linz?
Yes, sir.
All right. So Maynards are known for their frugality. Some call it penny pinching, but why waste something? Why spend money you don't have to? And so this is a story about a fella named Enoch Gatley, who was a little more saving minded than most. But one day he was reading the Portland Press Herald newspaper, and he saw an ad in the entertainment section. It said cruise on the coast, the East Coast, cruise from Portland, Maine down to the Bahamas and back, all accommodations and food provided, and it was only $100. And Enoch said, "Oh, that's a pretty good deal. I'm going to sign up for that right away." So he calls the number and he gets his ticket and he gets the instructions. And when the day arrives, he heads down to the dock there and on the waterfront in Portland, and he pulls up, and here's this beautiful looking ship, and he goes and presents his ticket, and they say, "Oh, come with me." They lead him up the gangway, and then they take him down the companionway, several different stairways, all the way down into the bottom of the ship. And he comes into this giant room, and there's benches placed laterally athwartship all up and down the room. And they sit him down on one of the benches, and there's a hole in the side of the ship, and there's a big piece of wood sticking in from the hole. And they put chains around his ankles and lock him in, and other people come and take their seats next to him. And then there's a guy up at the front with a big drum, and he starts banging on the drum. Boom, boom. And then there's a big bare-chested fellow with a whip walking up and down. He starts flicking the whip and says, "Row, you buggers, row!" Well, so Enoch and his seatmates start rowing, and they do this for just about 2 weeks. And the 2 weeks are almost up, and Enoch's seatmate turns to him. He says, no, Enoch turns to his seatmates. He said, well, the cruise is just about over, ain't it? And the guy says, yeah. And Enoch says, well, do you think we ought to tip the drummer? And his seatmate says, no, we didn't do that last year. Maine is always looking for a bargain. All right, I'm going to wrap up with a traditional shanty. This one probably originated with Maine sailors because it talks about picking huckleberries, and huckleberries and blueberries are endemic to the northeast coast. This is a halyard shanty called Huckleberry Hunting. And I got this one from the collection of a Maine shanty collector. Her name was Joanna Colcord. She published one of the earliest collection of shanties in America. There were some previous ones in Great Britain, but she was one of the earliest ones in America, and she was born on a square rig sailing vessel headed to China, so she knew what she was talking about. But here's Huckleberry Hunting. Join in on the choruses. Oh, the boys and the girls went to huckleberry hunting, to me hey, to me way, to me hey, oh hey. The boys and the girls went to huckleberry hunting and sing high-low, Moran's-o ray. Oh, a little boy ran off and a little girl ran out. Oh, I got that backwards. Oh, a little girl ran off and a little boy ran after, to me hey, to me way, to me oh way. The little girl fell down and he saw her little garter and sing high-low, Moran's-o ray. Well, he took her on his knee and he kissed her good and proper, to me hey, to me way, to me oh way. She kissed him back again and he didn't try to stop her and sing high-low, Moran's-o ray. He said, I'll be your beau if you let me be your fella, to me hey, to me way, to me hey, oh way. But the little girl said no, for my sweetheart's Johnny Miller, and sing high-low, Moran's-o ray. Then he put his arm all about her waspy waist, to me hey, to me way, to me oh way. She said to him, young man, you are in great haste, and sing high-low, Moran's-o ray. And then he put his hand all upon her knee, to me way, to me hey, to me oh way. She said to him, young man, you're a little bit too free, and sing high-low, Moran's-o ray. And then he put his hand all upon her thigh, to me hey, to me way, to me oh way. She said to him, young man, that's a little bit too high, and sing high-low, Moran's-o ray. And then he put his hand yet higher still, to me hey, to me way, to me oh way. She said to him, young man, that is really quite a thrill, and sing high-low, Moran's-o ray. Oh, I'm the shanty man of this working party, to me hey, to me way, to me oh way. So sing, lads, and pull, lads, so strong and hearty, and sing high-low, Moran's-o ray. So we got the vessel underway. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
And I'd like to remind everybody, we're the Portsmouth Maritime Folk Festival, and somewhere in the chat, there is a link. The festival has always been free. This is our 21st year. If I ever had to design a festival during a pandemic, I might decline. But we did it, and here we are. And so to keep this going through this time, we'd really appreciate anything you can do to help. Also, thank you, Jerry, and thank you all of the volunteers and everybody who's stepped up to make this happen. We really couldn't have done it without you. Oh my goodness gracious sakes alive.